Welcome to another episode of Three Men in a War Game. I'm Paul, and I'm apparently immune to acid.
I'm Kevin, and Molly Percocet.
And this is Potter, and vats of acid are the best escape plans.
All right. Totally unplanned that time.
I was about to say, we didn't even pick a theme, and we all riffed the same. It's awesome.
It worked out.
It's fantastic.
So
we're doing it
Chris,
live.
What we talking about tonight?
Frostgrave. Did we actually pick a topic?
Frostgrave.
I don't remember.
Frost on a grave.
I honestly, I really don't remember us picking a topic. My fault.
Well, we're good.
Hey, I don't do anything here. I just work here. I don't pick anything. I'm the weakest of the three of us.
I don't know that that's true. Before we get to hobby progress and the rest of this episode, we want to do a special thing and do the judgments for our painting contest. A little bit of housekeeping, though. I want to say we are very aware that we didn't do a great job about advertising deadlines, talking about this every week on the show, putting something in the Discord every week. I think we learned a lot about how to run a contest, and
very much.
We're planning on.
I believe the exact quote should be: "We learned a lot about how not to run a contest."
That's fair, and
that's fair,
and we're going to be doing this again and better. But we did get some entries, and we want to honor the contest, and that we have a small prize pool and some stuff to give out. So I still think it was a good time, and it looks like we got a few hobbyists new Starbreach crews, right? So definitely worth judging the painting contest, getting all these people's pictures up on Instagram and letting them post them finally in the Discord because they've been holding on to them. And yeah, the time has come to do it. So the first inaugural 3 Men in a War Game painting contest focused this time on a Starbreach warband. Guys, let's do this thing.
All right.
Woohoo! We had 5 entries, solid entries.
That's so exciting, though. That's so exciting. 5 entries. I love it. I love it. Thank you to everyone who finished up their crews. And I know we had at least one person send us a before picture that I don't think ever finished, but we thank you as well.
Yeah.
These were a lot of fun to look at, to talk about, to review. Like this was fun. Never gotten to do something like this before, and I had a blast doing it. So thank you guys for participating and letting us do this.
Yeah, for sure. Without further ado, let's get right into it. And we'll talk about the 5 entries, what we liked, what they were, stuff like that. And then again, we're going to let you guys see these and we'll talk about our winner. So I think the first entry we should talk about is James. And James sent in a Sisters of Battle themed Starbreach crew. Gentlemen, what do you guys think about these models?
These were fantastic. I really love the blending that was done on the cloaks for these. The red really stood out on them. He did, I think it was the Order of our Martyred Lady.
Yes.
I think it was.
Yeah, it looks like our order. Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, so like he's got decals on them. The contrast between the different colors with all the accent pieces are good. Like he's got one of them. I think I guess it's the leader with a chainsword and a crossbow, and I love the detail the color palette for that the metal on the crossbow.
Yeah, the like gold accents on the crossbow are pretty rad, and the cloaks look great too. They look like rich red, really nice, and then the water slide transfers really set them off too. They look real good.
Yeah, I mean, these are just well painted models. I mean, that's what it comes down to. These are just well done.
Yeah,
and whether these are on the What I really like is that whether these are on the table for 40K or for Starbreach, they're going to look fantastic, and people are going to come over and go, "Wow, these are great painted models."
Yeah,
exactly.
The basing on them is fantastic as well too. Like the grates and the use of that plastic, the plastic grating stuff, really helps stand out the basing as well too. And basing to me is something that always brings a model fully together. Mm-hmm. And I think the basing on these help make these models stand out even more, 100%. So I absolutely love these models.
I couldn't tell you. It's like one of the GW bases, right? It could be the Necromunda bases. I'm not sure, or it could be like just one of those base packs, but they look really nice.
Yeah,
they're like graded and look really good. So that's James. Our second entry is Ian, and Ian had an entirely 3D printed crew. Very like strong cyberpunk vibes going on with Ian's. And, we don't really necessarily have a good way to reference the models for you because they were all 3D printed. But they'll be up on the Instagram and they're super cool. And I think my favorite thing about Ian's paint job is like how neon he went. Like,
yes,
he dove all the way into cyberpunk and just like embraced the glow.
Yeah, he's got like a ninja-esque model on there. The blending he did with like the neon green on the katanas is absolutely brilliant, and he's got a robot I think he dubbed HK-47 in his write-up of his army, and it's got great OSL work on the gun as well too, with neon greens. He's got great pinks and purples or some blues in there. So yeah, he did a fantastic job on these, and I love the fact that they're 100% 3D printed. The models are fantastic.
Yeah, they're not going to look like anyone else's
after they're painted that they were. Even when he gave us the before, like after the print job, I could not tell that they were 3D printed.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, every step of these was just fascinating to watch, and just seeing them from 3D printed mode until final paint job was impressive. It's one thing to go out and pick up some models, but to really go in and print your own is awesome. I think that's such a neat step and such a neat idea.
And it's such a cool step for me for like miniatures agnostic gaming. So yes, when you're getting into game systems that run that miniatures agnostic system, it's really, that is the realm for 3D printed models.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even though, the main idea is that you can use any models from any system, it's still pretty cool to, have something that really feels like it fits for you.
And the way I think of it is like, so when you buy an army, right? Like not everybody paints their army like the colors on the box, because that's the way that you can put your personal expression onto your army is your paint job. Right. And this takes that to the next level in that, like, you can hand select every model that's in your crew, and they don't have to belong necessarily to other rule systems. You can just find a bunch of miniatures that look good together. And there are dozens of 3D Patreons now, like 3D sculptor Patreons that you can sign up for. And that the number of models that are available even free on Thingiverse is staggering.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I was going to say is like the amount of creativity that you're able to get with it. Because like, especially if you're one of these guys that's really good creating your own or gals, creating your own STL files. The amount of level of creativity that you can do and customization into these models for your minis agnostic games is just there's no stopping you. Like, yeah, it's great. I love it. I wish I had one. I wish I had that level of creativity. And I'm looking forward to see where this goes in the miniature community in the future.
Mm-hmm. Paul, do you have any thoughts about Ian's?
I think did I not say anything about them? I think, I mean, the paint jobs look great, right? Like you guys said, the neon is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's super cool.
I like the all in on that. Just creates a good sci-fi feel anytime you can throw in some cyberpunk neon in there. So I thumbs up to that.
Yeah.
Good decision on the paint job. Good decision on the 3D printing, and they all fit well together.
Agreed.
That's just it, right? Like, they all feel like they should be together.
Yep, exactly. For absolute sure. Yep, that's totally true. Okay, so moving on, we have Jason's entry, and Jason, he wrote us a story that's pretty amusing. It's very entertaining, and we'll get his permission to post the story, to post the pictures. But essentially, he grabbed a starter kit from the War on Christmas Village and wrote a story about how they're defenders of an ice planet. So it's like Santa and a bunch of snowmen, and it's really funny and a well-executed story to miniatures. I think if there was no story with it, I'd be like, but the story like endears me to the models, and they're really fun.
Yeah, I'm loving it's a sword wielding snowman going to protect this frost planet with a a Santa that looks like the Pope leading them. It's a fantastically well executed model range. It's hilarious, and the story, yeah, like you said, it helps bring that crew, to the level.
Yeah,
it
anchors it into Star Breach. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I don't need the story to think that this is freaking amazing, because I love weird shit like that. So
yeah.
I'm all in. Like, to me, this is why you have minis agnostic gaming is
so you
to
can
be
do
able to
wild
have
shit.
a great way to have your weird ass snowman model that you bought that you were like, when am I ever going to get the chance to use this? Now, this is when you use that. This is a fantastic use of some odd models.
I'm gonna bow to your logic. You're 1,000% right. That's totally right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's for, right? Like all those Christmas models that you buy when you're like, I'm never realistically putting this on the table.
Well, what I want to do now is I want to go to like garage sales and find a bunch of like, things that old ladies are selling that are like the Christmas stuff, like the Christmas houses, and then give it all to Jason so that he can have a Star Breach board that's like the home turf for his snowmen.
Oh my God. You got to go to Michael's in December and just load up.
I just think that'd be really funny.
Look, I'm telling you right now, one of my deepest, darkest secrets is that I love Christmas villages. So, like, I just need to get these models now and ask Jason if I can steal his idea, because I have an entire, 3 boards worth of terrain downstairs right now.
Well, there you go. There you go.
That'll be a great Malifaux table.
All right. Yes. Brilliant idea. I absolutely love the execution on this.
Yeah, it's real fun. Okay, on to the next one. The paint jobs. The paint jobs are good. I like them. They're like they like sell the theme. They're solid, right? Solid paint jobs. Nothing wrong with them at all.
Yeah, I went with the classic kind of looking Santa Claus. The snowmen with their scarves are well within theme. You could definitely tell that they're tied together as a faction. So you did a great job in execution on it.
Definitely.
Yep. Absolutely love it. It works. So going on with the bizarre love of Christmas in my household, my wife loves the old blow molds. And as soon as I saw them, I could see them as living embodiments of the snowmen blow molds that we have around here. Mm-hmm. So it's perfect. It really is. It's to theme, absolutely perfect. I can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah. Right.
Apparently I really love Christmas too, and I just didn't know that until right now.
All right. You heard it here first. Paul loves Christmas. All right. Moving on to our next entry is Tim. And Tim provided with us some hunters, and the hunters, following a cool theme, he has all Star Wars Legion models, and all bounty hunters. Mm-hmm. Yep. And these are magnificent. Like, they're so good. I don't even know where to start. Like, there's so many cool details, like the perfect execution on Boba Fett's helmet to the really subtle effect of the Darksaber that he has. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, his Bosk is probably one of the best Bosks I've seen painted up. The scales on it are very well picked out. His greens on Boba Fett are perfectly matched to, I feel like, the color of it in the films. He's accented all the battle damage accurately. Sabine's purples are blended perfectly on her helmet. And the droids that he's got in there too, as his backup crew, are great as well too. I mean, his medical droid is a black model, but it definitely has enough detail on it that it still stands out. And it's not just a plain black.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So my thing with these models is that whether they are on the board for Legion or whether they are on the board for Star Breach, he is going to receive a lot of compliments on how they look.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah, they're very, very, very good.
Yeah, the Boba Fett is fantastic. That's the one that stood out most. I know Chris, you picked out the Bosk, but I couldn't take my eyes off Boba.
I just happen to have a thing for Bosk. He's one of my favorite bounty hunters.
Yes, and the models are good too.
Okay, interesting.
What, that I like Bosk?
Yeah.
Bosk is cool, man.
For him.
I do.
mean, he likes lizards. What can we talk? What can we say? All right, so moving on to our last entry, and I'm very apologetic here because this entry basically was submitted through Discord, and I think this is through a fault of ours not being forthcoming enough with the information about the contest. He didn't realize the contest was still on, didn't submit them when they needed to be submitted, but luckily we hadn't actually done the judging until today, so we are including them. And I also don't know your first name, but your Discord handle is McNS. So we will be sending you a DM and talking to you about it and making sure we have your approval to post the pictures on Instagram and all that, because I don't think you realized you were submitting an official submission when you posted them in our Discord. But you did note that this person did note that they were for Star Breach. And what they are is they're old models from the Resolution system, and it's like a Vatican faction. So definitely set up for Inquisition in Star Breach. And these models are pretty rad. I
really like them.
They look like they have. I would describe, if I was describing them to someone who's not seen these models, they have like their influences maybe somewhere in 40K, but have forked out of it, and it's its own thing. But it looks like a dark future, inquisitional. Like these guys definitely look churchy and zealoty. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's a favorite theme of mine.
Yeah. Yep. As you do with your matriarchy and all that.
Yeah.
But the bases for these models are really cool. They look like rock slabs, and they have some cool OSL on them. So that I'm sure if they line up in a certain way, they have like a color pattern that comes down over them, and they look really neat. Again, well executed paint jobs. It's got it's like a Sisters of Battle-y kind of paint scheme, right? A lot of black, cream, and dark red.
I was going to say, it's like an interesting balance between Sisters of Battle and like very also Manath theme.
Yeah.
From War Machine, right? Like all that cream just screams Manath with the red.
That's the aesthetic. It's Sisters of Battle mixed with Menoth. That's like that's how I would describe this. That's perfect.
But then what I also like is the guy in the middle. I guess to stand out, whereas everybody else has kind of a red tone to their cloaks, his is more purple, and I really like that. And maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but tell me the guy between the one with the purple and the woman with the gun that's sitting in the back there, is that like...
Looks like it's levitating a ball between its hands.
Yeah. But like if you look at his face, tell me that's not like the Scream painting.
I mean, a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, and I don't know if that's like the angle or like he's just got a like deformed face, but I absolutely love it. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, these are just... Yeah, it's well done. And the crab monster thing is great too.
Yeah, the desaturated color palette that he went with this is really good. It's very muted, but it works very well. To me it kind of it's reminiscent of like, just the old cardinal colors, but just desaturated enough of that red to make them look a little bit more menacing than they would. So like it's definitely very good on a play on the actual church, but just taking the colors that they would probably have in reality, desaturating them enough to make them look a little bit more sinister. I really like that look.
And the other thing that I really like that I appreciate that he's done is like there's every model either on the base or somewhere on the model has a heavy contrast piece that draws your eye to it. So like the female model's holding like a glowing blue ball. The mech model has a glowing blue eye. Some of the bases have that subtle blue hue along the bottom, and it's just a cool like sharp contrast to the red and cream, and it looks really good.
Yep.
All right,
very well done.
Yeah, so that was our 5, and we don't want to add too much to the actual episode, so each of you pick a winner, and I'm going to trust that you're not going to change the winner that you pick to go with the flow as we announce them, and I'm sure you had something in mind already. I'll go last. But Paul, what is your favorite of the entries that we have?
My favorite, honestly, is the resolution models.
All right, cool. So McNiss is models, the resolution churchy models. Chris, what is your favorite?
Yeah, this was a tough one. I had a lot going in. They were all so good. I think I'm gonna go with Tim's Hunters. I really, really liked his paint job on those models, and it's not because they're Star Wars. I swear.
And so for me as the final vote, and I'm not doing this as a swayer, I also would choose Tim's purely just because this is a painting contest, and I think technically they are like the best painted. They're so good. I love them, and I think there was just a really well executed paint job on the theme. It's perfect. So
fine then.
So Tim, we will be in contact with you shortly, probably before this airs, to ask you what color dice you would like of your official Starbreach models. And so Tim will have the choice of color. But now the runner-up prize is the other set of dice. So whatever set Tim doesn't choose, the other person will win. And the way we are going to choose, because we have 4 other entries, is I am going to roll a D20 live on the show. And the D20 is going to be split up into groups of 5. So 1 through 5, 6 through 10, 11 through 15, and 16 through 20. And whoever wins will get the second one. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. So
sounds good.
Here we go. I got a nice, big, heavy D20 here. We're going to give that a little roll. All right. And so I rolled a 10, and a 10 is James.
All right. Yay.
Congrats, James.
Yes. So James will win the second set of dice.
And what about everybody?
Yes. And now, for all 5 entrants, you are going to win a set of 3 Men in a War Game D6s as well. So everybody, including our 2 winners, is going to get a set with our lovely mugs on the 6s. So
that is correct.
We all know you wanted them.
So we will be distributing those dice either by mail or in person, because there are quite a few in-person possibilities for distribution here. So we'll be in contact with each of the people to find out what the preference for delivery is and to get you your prizes. And that's that, guys. That's the first 3 Men in a War Game painting contest. How fun!
Huzzah.
Awesome. And we'll be doing this again, so we'll have some information for you fairly soon on another one.
Yep, and I've actually got an idea for a theme already, so probably will be coming up shortly, and we promise we'll do a better job running it.
Yeah. And with that, now for hobby talk.
Chops, what you been up to?
Very little. Working on a secret project that I can't talk about.
Oh yeah, that's right. How
Yep.
are you going to complete it on by your deadline day, which according to the last episode was originally the 11th, and then you changed it to the 14th.
The 14th may still happen.
Okay, cool. I'm excited.
I'll say the secret project looks really pretty of the pictures you sent.
Thank you. I'm excited about it.
I'm mostly excited about the unveiling.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. So how about you then, Chris? What you been up to?
So I bought stuff this week.
That's a start.
Though I didn't get to build a lot of it because it came pre-built. So I bought my Baratheon's Hero 2 kit. So
Nice.
So I got Renly's crew of people there. So I've got that to start playing some games. I picked up some Malifaux, got that built and started painted.
What the hell did you buy from Malifaux?
Tell the listeners what you bought.
Tell us what you bought.
You know what I bought. I was like, I sent
us pictures of it.
No, we didn't.
Yes, you did.
Now you got to tell Paul so he can feel bad about not looking at the pictures you sent.
So I'm a dirty reser, a dirty arcanist, and I bought the Rasputina December box.
Sure did. Yeah, that's the picture you sent us yesterday with the painting that you commented on was raspy.
Oh, is that what it was? I was like, well, I looked at it and I'm like, man, that's a cool looking Pano winter model.
Nope, that's Rasputina.
Yeah, that's
blue. It's got a coat.
Realm.
That's
not even the same genre
sculpt.
of fiction.
Yes, it's pretty funny. I mean, I can see it. But also that is the third ed Rasputina sculpt.
Yeah, she's just, this third ed sculpt is beautiful.
It's dope.
And I can see why Paul did it because of the bright blue that's on her that I started for the ice on her legs.
Yeah, well, now that I look at it, I can see that it's ice and that she's wearing like a early 20th century pilot hat.
Yeah,
which is definitely not Infinity, but especially I think I mostly looked at the back, and it totally looks like it could be a Winter 4.
It does.
Yes,
I won't knock you for thinking it was a Winter 4 mini, because with Infinity on the brain, I can totally see it.
Yeah,
and I mean, if you look at it, just under that is where I was building Infinity lists, because I looked at that and I'm like, ooh, Infinity models, I should work on building lists.
That's pretty funny.
Which would be interesting why the next part of the conversation in our text chat went with you providing your combined
it
your
does make
Onyx
it
lists.
more funny that you non-sequitured into Infinity lists.
Okay, that makes
I was on topic.
I just thought you were a jerk and were like, I'm just going to ignore what Potter said. I mean, but that's also on point as well too. So it didn't bother me.
Not unlikely. So the whole thing just went right above all of our heads, which is the best.
Oh man!
And you're finding out live on radio.
Yeah, welcome to our lives, people.
So, so besides that, so I got the whole crew built up and everything's primed. I started on Raspi just because I had a color scheme in mind for her that I wanted to do. And I think it's very close to the box art color scheme, because I liked it. So, so she's fully base coated. So I just have to start shading her, which I've already started some of the shades on her cloak, and I'll work up and finish her up. And then I also grabbed my JSA army. I got the army box purchased. It was supposed to show up today, but it looks like it'll be here tomorrow.
Dope.
So I did a lot of stimulus money spending.
Paul, you?
Well, the bad news is that I always figured when I gave M3E a go with Chris, I would play Raspy. So I guess now I'm really out of.
Well, I'll play the Marcus crew you're getting me, and you can play Raspy.
Oh yeah, then I don't even have to build mine.
Right, you can just borrow mine.
I'm still working on Unidronuary.
I love that name.
I didn't quite get nearly as much done as I wanted to, but I have blocked in all of my yellow, so all the main color blocking is done. So now, until the end of the month, I just got to shade and highlight, and I think that's entirely plausible. So I think I'll be able to do that. The other fun thing I did is that when I was at the game store the other day, I was looking at paints, and I realized that they had the MSP skin trios, which the thing I always hate about doing skin is that none of your skin tones have the same tones to them. So if you just grabbed, GW skin tones off the shelf, none of them truly match each other. So I was pretty stoked about that. So I bought tan skin and dark skin, and I used the tan skin trio today to paint up the face on Cassian Andor, and I'm freaking loving how it came out with very little work.
Very cool, and it looks good. I can't wait to see the rest of it.
Yeah. I'm shocked at how great that skin tone came out, and it was literally just putting on the main color, shading some of the, like the around the chin and then the eye sockets and around the hair, and then just doing the highlight on the nose and the forehead and the cheekbone, and it was done, and it looks like ridiculous.
Super cool.
Yeah, so that's where I am. So I'm on track to. I know I finished K2SO last year, but as of right now, I am on track to finish Unidronuary and Cassian this month.
Super awesome. Off to getting the goals.
I mean, as far as people know, could have finished it 2 weeks ago and it still would have been last year. As far as
Well, technically, I still need to decorate the base, so that part will at least be done this year.
There you go. See, not fully finished yet.
So,
all right, though, guys, we have a big topic to cover. My throat is going to be sore at the end of it, so we should get into it. Frostgrave, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, big picture things. Frostgrave, written by the, I think now legendary in the hobby space, Joseph McCullough. I feel like Frostgrave now, and you guys can stop me if this isn't true, it's one of those war games that if you're in the hobby, like if you play miniatures games, you've heard of Frostgrave. Even if you've never played it or been interested in it, you know the name of the game. It's like that deep in the hobby now.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I think that's a fair statement.
You guys both talked at the same time.
Oh, sorry. I agree. Never played Frostgrave, but I at least have heard of it.
It is a fair statement.
Cool. All right, so this is a miniatures agnostic wizard battling miniatures game. Oh, I love that sentence, you guys. Very, very cool. And I'll tell you, I've played a lot of Ghost Archipelago, like a pretty fair amount, and I never got into Frostgrave because I liked the setting of Ghost Archipelago, and I didn't realize how different they actually were. I think I was very nonchalant about knowing how similar they were, but in actuality they're very different. And let me tell you, this book is a tome, like 222 pages. This thing is beefy.
Dang.
Yeah, it is a beefy book, and it is loaded, packed to the gills with good stuff. And when I say 212 pages, like the core rules are slim, like any good war game, right? The core rules don't take a lot, but everything else that fills it out is important. And we'll get into what's in there, but it's like a bestiary, a spell, the descriptions of all the spells and the things that are in here just take a lot of room. So if you've ever been excited about a player's handbook for an RPG, it's like a similar feeling when you start cracking into this book. The closest thing that I can describe it to is the Seeker's Handbook for Relic Blade. But Frostgrave is there's a bit more to it. They're very different games, but I mean, it's similar in that as you're going through the book, it really feels like you're going through an RPG manual, which is awesome. With being miniatures agnostic and a skirmish game, you might guess that it plays on a 3x3, and you might be correct. So you've got a 3x3 game here, but the cool thing about this game is that there are both rules and suggestions for playing on a 2x2. There's even a sentence in the book that says something like, playing on a 2x2 is perfectly acceptable, if not fast and deadly. And there are suggestions for deployment. So rather than deploying on the board edges, you deploy on the corners on the 2x2, because that starts you technically in a more far apart sort of pattern. Instead of having the entire board edge on one side, you just have 4 inches off the corners. And that's cool. Makes the 2x2 work. This is a game that's based on a D20 core mechanic, and in all honesty, you only need a single D20 to play the game.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. So everything will be managed on that D20, and you guys know from playing Infinity that D20s are swingy as a mofo.
Yes, they are.
And you also know in Infinity you can sometimes roll extra dice to mitigate that. Nah.
Not in this one, huh?
not with one dice.
Nope. So that's one thing I will say is that Frostgrave can be very swingy, but I think it's actually to the game's benefit that it's as swingy as it is. It actually helps the game more than it hurts it, and we'll get into why. But it's a good mechanic, and it likens it back to its RPG roots, right? Like the core D20, and like any D&D or Pathfinder player, you understand what that means. You roll your D20 and add your bonus, right? And that's your skill check roll. And you have a similar rule. It's not quite the same, but similar in Frostgrave. So far, so excited?
So far, so good.
Okay, so we can't talk about Frostgrave the way that we talk about most war games, which is to get right into the core mechanics, because the first thing that you have to do in Frostgrave is you have to create your warband. And creating your warband in this game is an experience the same way that creating a role-playing game character is. It's not as simple as just like looking through cards or looking through a list builder and building the thing you want, because building a wizard specifically is a task in and of itself. Like, they want you to name the wizard, but the thing about it is, right off the bat, you are going to select from one of 10 schools of magic. So you're going to be like a chronomancer or an elementalist, an enchanter, a summoner, a necromancer, etc. And there are 10 of these different categories.
You had me at summoning and necromancing.
Yeah, I was like, that's really cool.
There you go. And let me tell you, summoners and necromancers are aligned, because there are in these schools of magic, every one of them has 3 aligned schools, 5 neutral schools, and 1 unaligned. So that you basically, each of the other 9 falls into that as aligned, neutral, or opposed. And that basically means that they're easier or harder to cast than your home school of magic. Now, when you create your wizard, so you've chosen you've named your wizard, you've chosen your school of magic. Now you need to select your spells, and you get to choose 8 spells that your wizards start with. No matter what, you start with 8. You get 3 from your home school, and then you take 1 from each of the 3 aligned schools, because you have 3, right? So if you're a necromancer, as an example, your aligned are chronomancer, summoner, and witch. So as you're building your necromancer, you take 3 necromancy spells, then you take 1 chronomancer, 1 summoner, and 1 witch spell. And then for your final 2 spells, you choose from your 5 neutrals, and you pick 2 spells out of those 5 schools.
Okay.
So right off the bat, if you think about how different your warband can be than your friends, right? Like each of these different schools of magic has, I think it's like 12 or 8 spells, 8 spells per school. And so in the fact that you have 8 spells per discipline or school of magic, and you're picking 3 from your main and then a bunch from the other schools, like it's very unlikely you're going to build the same wizard as your friend, even if your friend is playing a necromancer. So that's pretty cool. And then after you do that, you hire the rest of your crew. And so you basically, the way that choosing your crew starts is that you're going to have an amount of gold crowns to hire, and it's 400 gold crowns to hire your crew. And you're going to want to spend your first 100 gold crowns on your apprentice, because your apprentice is basically a mini-me for your wizard. They come with the same spells. And they come with, basically, it's a nerf stat line. So your wizard has a core stat line that it starts with, and then your apprentice has basically, it's a -2 on a couple of the stats, and then also -2 for their casting of the spells that you know, because they're learning from you, right? They're not a full-fledged wizard yet.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so they're truly like apprenticing your wizard, right? They're studying the same things your wizard is studying.
Yeah.
And then from there, you get to hire soldiers. And so the way that the warband works is you're going to have it's 10 people, right? So you have 1 wizard, 1 apprentice, and then 8 soldiers.
Okay.
And your soldiers are made up from a whole different host of things. So they can be like thieves and thugs, infantrymen and men-at-arms, up to specialists, which are people like archers and knights and templars and rangers. And each one of them costs a certain amount of gold crowns, but thugs and thieves are always free because they'll come along just for the loot and the good time, right?
Right.
And of those other 8 that you're going to hire, 4 of them can be specialists. And to give you an idea, so you start with 300 gold crowns, right? Your basic standard soldiers are free for your thugs and thieves, and then 50 or 75 gold, depending on if you want infantrymen, men-at-arms, or apothecaries. And then your specialists start at 75 gold crowns and go up to 125. So with that starting 300, you're going to be hiring some thugs and thieves, right? Because you're not going to be able to fill out the whole thing. So no matter what, you're going to have your wizard, your apprentice, 1 or 2 pretty dope, maybe 3 really dope guys, and then, the rabble. And you'll be able to hire more as you go through a campaign.
Okay.
And that's basically the setup of the game, right? So you're going to be building this basically list for yourself that is a, motley crew of adventurers. And we haven't even talked about the theme of this game, and I feel like that's important, and I've totally screwed up at this point. So Frostgrave the area you're in is called Felstad, and Frostgrave is a city inside of Felstad that has been previously basically snowed over and is being uncovered and excavated, and there's tons of relics from the destruction of the city of Frostgrave. And so with all this wealth of magical artifacts and treasure to be gained, wizards are descending upon Frostgrave to battle throughout the city and collect the riches that lie within it.
Oh, so it's a kind of like a Mordheim.
That's a fun MacGuffin.
You're going to be sensing a theme here, Potter.
Yeah, I was like, this a little familiar.
This is a little familiar. Yep. So you're going to be going into Felstad, the frozen city, seeking your fame and fortune, and leveling your wizard up. Also to be noted is this game is terrain heavy because there's potential for magic and missile weapons to be flying around, like crossbows and bows, and then your elemental bolts and bone darts and stuff like that flying across. You want a lot of terrain, plus you want to articulate the frozen city. So you want to think about this game from a standpoint where you're going to want a pretty terrain dense board. So far so cool.
I'm on board.
Yeah.
All right.
You've piqued my interest at this point in time with your settings, so...
Sweet. So let's talk about the main setup for a standard game. So the standard game of Frostgrave, there's 20 scenarios in the back of the book, which, holy crap, 20. And we'll get into some of the scenarios a little bit later. But the core of the game is that you're going to start by placing 5 treasure tokens, because that's the MacGuffin of the game, right? Is that you're going after these treasures and relics that are inside of Frostgrave, or inside of Felstad. So the idea is you place 1 in the middle, and that's your central treasure, and then your players alternate placing treasures. The first couple that you place have to be closer to the center than the edges, and then the second 2 have to be closer to the edges than the center. And you alternate placing, but only after all the treasure placement do you actually roll for deployment edges.
Oh, cool. So you're not putting it out to your advantage. Correct.
You're putting it out based on if this is going to be okay for me no matter what edge of the board I come out on. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. I like that because that's one of the things with Legion, right? It always seems like you can set your objectives up to benefit you.
Yeah, and you can't here. You really don't want to, because you don't know where you're going to deploy and you could end up messing yourself up.
Right. I like that. Good plan.
Yep. And so after you place your 5 treasures, you should always consult your scenario first, because some of the scenarios have alternate treasure placement. But after that, the game starts proper. Actually, before we get into that, let's talk about your core stat line on your game, or on your people, because basically every person in Frostgrave has the same 6 statistics. So M for movement, that's pretty standard, and it's exactly what you expect. So whatever your M stat is, that's how many inches you can move on a movement. Then you have your fight stat, your shoot stat, your armor stat, your will stat, and your health. And to give you an example, your starting wizard, so your base wizard stat line is 6 movement, plus 2 fight, plus 0 shoot, 10 armor, plus 4 will, and 14 health. And we'll get into what those pluses mean in a little bit. But that's a core stat line. And then a core stat line for a total scrub, so a thug, is 6 movement, 2 fight, 0 shoot, 10 armor, minus 1 will, 10 health. So not a whole lot of difference between your level 0 wizard or level 1 wizard and your basic average thug, right? And as a matter of fact, when you start talking about knights have plus 4 fight and 13 armor. So they can even be tougher than your wizard. And that makes sense, right? It's your bodyguard.
Right. Wizard can't do it all.
Exactly. But the wizards and the apprentices are the only ones that can cast spells. And also pivotal to the way that the game works, because we haven't gotten into the core game loop, because the activation phase is different than any game you guys have played to this point.
So when you're creating your wizard, is there any way to modify those stats to make it any different from your opponent's wizards outside of their school of magic?
Once you start playing the game, Chris, every scenario you can earn up to 300 experience. And every 100 experience can be used to turn in for a level up
during the campaign.
During a campaign, okay. And each level you gain, you can use to enhance a core stat, learn a new spell, or make a spell that you already know easier to cast.
Okay, so there's nothing in the character creation. It's all through your experience through going through the matches in the campaign.
Correct. Okay. So your wizard will grow in power as you play the game with your friends.
So game one, everybody's on the same even playing field.
Yep, and then they separate. Well, I mean, everyone's on the same even playing field, but with much different magic, probably.
Correct. Right. Yeah, I'm talking outside of the schools of magic.
Yeah, and then that's where they differentiate further and further the stronger you get.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm kind of envisioning this right now, like Indiana Jones and Belloc, but with magic. Okay. Right.
I mean, that's more like that's more like Ghost Archipelago, but yeah, you're close.
Yeah, like I feel like they're going in looking for these relics and trying to outdo each other.
Yeah, that's actually pretty accurate. That is what this is.
Yeah, and then like I feel like as you go through the campaign, they kind of just hate each other more because one's like outdoing the other one or whatever, and that just kind of builds that rivalry. So this is fun in my head.
Yeah, I think playing this game in like a group of like between 4 and 6 people is probably like primo. Like 2 people can have a good campaign, but like once you start getting like 3, 4, 5, oh boy, it can get really good. Because you can, you might come across a warband you haven't seen and be like, damn, what were you doing before?
Right.
And the other thing to note too is that there is equipment, right? So like when you buy a crossbow, they come with a crossbow, quiver, dagger, light armor, and all those things factor into how the game works. And there are like magic items. We're not going to be able to get into everything because we'd be talking for hours, right? If I was like reading the text off this book, I just want to give you like a pretty good surface level so you're excited about it. But an example might be like a 2-handed weapon. So if you have a 2-handed weapon, they do +2 damage when you're factoring for damage. And we'll talk about that in combat. And all the different weapons have different characteristics. But given that they all have characteristics, they all come up in a half-page table. So you can print off a half-page reference, and it gives you everything you need to know about the available weaponry in the game. So that's pretty cool, too. So now let's talk about the core of how this game works. So we talked about setting up the table, but we haven't talked about the phases of the game, and because that really is where this game starts to separate from other games, because this is a skirmish game, right? It is 10 models per side, and because your core 2 schlub type models are free, you're gonna have 10. And given that it's 10 models per side, that like falls right in that skirmish size. Now, it's not I go, you go, and it's not alternating activations. It's a thing unto itself. So the first thing you do is you start by rolling for initiative, because what good role-playing light system doesn't have a D20 roll for initiative, right? You got to do that. So once you've determined initiative, you set who the first player, second player, and you can play this game multiplayer too. Like the rules account for playing with 3 or 4 players. But in general, it's the first player and the secondary player for your standard 2-player game. Now, once you've played, you have 4 phases. You have your wizard phase, your apprentice phase, your soldier phase, and your creature phase. And now you might be making some assumptions right now based on what I just said, and let me tell you they're wrong. So let's go through it. So in your wizard phase, the player with initiative starts, and that player activates that wizard, and then between 0 and 3 soldiers of their choice that are within 3 inches and line of sight of the wizard. So in your wizard phase, you get to activate your wizard and his core retinue.
That kind of makes sense.
And your opponent gets to answer in kind, activating their wizard and their wizard's core retinue. And then the apprentice phase comes, and it's similar. Your apprentice gets to activate, and between 0 and 3, people within 3 inches get to activate. And then once both players have done the apprentice phase, both players do the soldier phase where they activate the rest of their soldiers. So the primary player activates the rest of their soldiers, and then the secondary player activates theirs.
So basically, like anything that wasn't close enough to the wizard or the apprentice.
Exactly. Or that, you may have a reason to hold something for an activation later, right? Like you might have someone within 3 inches of the wizard that you're like, I actually want to do something with this guy after, because it might be possible that, so you've got a knight, right? And it might be that you don't want to activate with the wizard because you're expecting that your opponent will come closer. And once they come closer, your knight will be in range to move and attack. So you don't activate them with the wizard.
Right. Makes sense.
But the key is in the choice. It's between 0 and 3 within 3 inches. Right. And then anyone you don't activate, you get to activate in that soldier phase. Okay. So it's not I go, you go, and it's not alternating activation, right? Because it's like I go with my wizard and their guys, you go with your wizard and their guys. I go with my apprentice and their guys, your apprentice and their guys, and then my soldiers and your soldiers. And then after that, there's a creature phase, because this game, there are like non-player enemies in this game, because you're going through a haunted city.
Makes sense.
Yep.
So what that actually reminds me of, Kevin, is when War Machine tried to do an Apocalypse style game level.
Yeah.
And it was very much that same way. Like you got to activate a Warcaster and like 2 or 3, units supporting in addition to them. Yeah. And then it would go back and forth depending on how many Warcasters you had.
I forgot that was even a thing.
It's definitely not something that I've encountered, so maybe not wholly unique, but I think it's pretty unique in the skirmish space.
It for sure it is, and I mean I don't know that, like, I mean obviously that style of War Machine never took off, but it's definitely a fascinating way of doing it, and it's very different from how most games do function, but it's very neat because you get to kind of make that decision space, right? Like,
yep.
Of what's important to move now versus waiting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I want to mention now for Frostgrave players that I'm going to gloss over and not mention a lot of things. Like I don't want to complicate things by talking about group activation, because like there are like and also like the nuances of like the movement mechanics. Because buy the book is fantastic. And it would take forever to go through all of it. But I want to give you guys a good understanding. And I just want to let people know that might be listening that are like, you didn't talk about this. And it's just because I didn't think it was important for a surface level discussion.
Right. Sure.
Because right now is when we're like, we've covered like the first 40 pages of the book, and I'm about to like really start skimming.
Oh, dang.
Again, I haven't talked about everything in the 40 pages, right? Because it's 40 pages of rules and stuff. And it's essentially the like how you create your warband and the essence of playing the game. But so what does an activation look like? An activation looks like, so when we're talking about, you get to activate a wizard and 0 to 3 of their guys, what the hell does that mean? Everybody gets 2 actions, but if they take 2 actions, one of them has to be movement.
Okay.
All right. And then the other thing you can do can consist of a lot of stuff: fighting, shooting, spell casting, and any special actions that are noted anywhere else in the book. So, but one of them has to be a move if you're taking 2, and you can move twice.
Okay. So if you only take 1 action, you don't have to move. You can just stand and spell cast.
You can stand and shoot, stand and fight. And in a lot of cases, That's all you can do. Because once you're locked in combat, you don't have a lot of options. Like fighting is what you can do.
Okay.
So yes, that's correct. And we'll get into how risky fighting is too. That's why it's like you could be like locked in combat. That's boring. My guys just have to slug it out. But once we talk about how combat works, you're going to be like spicy because like it's risky, as it should be. You're slinging magic around in a magic city. So that's activation, and that's how you activate. So movement is, again, we talked about what movement means, right? You have a move stat of 5, you get to move 5 inches. But it's also worth noting that a second move is half your move stat.
Okay. So slightly infinity like there.
Yep. So if you have a move stat of 5, your full move is 7.5 inches, right? Because 5 inches for your first move, 2.5 for your second.
Oh, so no rounding up.
Yep. Jumping, simple. You can jump 1 inch horizontally from prone, and you can jump any distance you've moved previously. So if you move 2 inches, you can jump 2 inches.
Cool.
And that's jumping. Easy. Falling, there's a table for falling damage as falling damage do. But let's talk about stat rolls, because a lot of this game has to do with stat rolls, and we're going to have our good friend, the target number.
Target number.
Woo-hoo. Yep. So generally you're going to have a target number, and it will be written like make a X roll TNX.
Okay.
Yeah. And the TX is going to be based on one of your stats. So will, melee, shooting, etc. So you make the roll and you add your stat and any relevant bonuses, and that's your roll. So if your fight is +4 and you roll a 10, your roll is 14.
Okay.
Easy, right?
Yep, makes sense.
Cool. A 20 is always a success, unmodified, and an unmodified 1 is always a failure, no matter what. Worth noting. And also, the highest bonus you can get is +10. That's also and that's an easy thing to remember. Like, the highest you can go is +10, and you might be thinking like +10. Jesus Christ, how do you get to that? Well, there's crowd outs, like Guild Ball style crowd outs in this game, and if you have people that are helping you, each person that's helping you lends +2 to your fight.
+2.
Dang.
Yes.
I like that.
And then you might also have a weapon that gives you plus something, right? Like you might have picked up a magic weapon that gives you +2 fight. So now your core fight stat is +3, and you've got a weapon for +2, that's 5, and you've got 3 guys helping you, that's +6. Now you're at 11.
So but you're not, because you have to be at 10 at max, right?
Exactly, 10 at max. That's the important part, is 10 is your highest bonus. But also, boy, if you're at +10, whoever's on the receiving end of that is getting fucked up.
Yeah, boy.
And we'll talk about why. Well, unless you're really, like, disastrously unlucky.
And you roll a 1.
and you roll a 1. So that's, and we're going to gloss over a lot of that because there's like movement by spelling, movement off the table, because the core mechanic of this game is you get treasure chests, right? And the way you secure a treasure chest is by having someone drag it off the table.
Okay.
So you get to a chest, and then your person drags the chest off the table. And once your guys drag the chest, whether it's an apprentice or a schlub, once they've pulled it off the table, then that you've gotten it. Right, you have that treasure now, and you're going to get to roll on your treasure table at the end of the scenario. And cool. in general, the person who has the most treasures at the end wins, which is why there's 5.
Okay.
Right.
But also like I said, there's rules for falling. There's also rules for swimming. So like the game really covers all of the things that you'd want to cover in a game that's fully interactive, 3D, and has complex and thorough terrain rules.
Right.
Cool. So now let's talk about combat, because I promised you spice. So let's talk about the spiciness of combat here. So the way that combat works is it's an opposed roll every time you do combat, and not like my attack versus your defense. Au contraire, it's my fight versus your fight every time, and the person who wins the roll wins the combat.
Okay.
So even if you're being attacked, you still have the potential to do damage to your opponent.
Okay, I like it.
So right off the bat, it's awesome, and like in practice, this is so good because it makes it keeps you engaged the whole time. Mm-hmm. On top of the fact that you're not waiting long for your next activation, this keeps you in it, and also it increases the drama of every combat, because every combat, even one that's your turn, is risky, just like Infinity, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly, because you could lose on your turn.
Yes. Yep. And so here's how it works. So you roll and you add all your bonuses together, and whoever has the higher value wins the fight. All right. So that's simple. So how do you manage this after? So what you do is you take your roll and then you subtract the person you're attacking's armor, and whatever's left is the damage you do.
Okay.
So let's say, just as an example, I have a guy who, I roll, my roll with my bonuses is 15. Chris, you roll plus your bonuses is 12. I've won the combat with 15. Your guys' armor is 10. So we subtract 10 from 5. I do 5 damage to you.
Okay.
Wait. Say that again?
Yep. So let's go back from the top. So it's you take your roll and then you subtract your opponent's armor. Okay. And that is the damage done to your opponent.
Ah, gotcha.
So if my roll was 15 and Chris's was 12, I win because my roll's 15.
Right. And at that point, his roll no longer matters.
Correct. Because we're just looking at my damage now because I have been the person who has successfully swung the sword here.
So okay, cool. Because when you had said it before, I was thinking it was the difference between what he rolled and what you rolled.
No. It's the total roll minus their armor. And there are also weapons that give things like plus damage. Right. So it might be my dice roll plus 2 minus your armor. Right. Because there are weapons that are like plus 2 damage or plus 1 damage, just as an example.
And then it's the 15 minus my armor.
Oh, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
No, I'm saying that it's that 15, minus my armor of 10.
Right, but it's also possible I roll a 9 in combat and you roll a 5 in combat. I win the combat, but I don't do any damage because your armor is 10.
Right.
That's a neat way of having that function.
Yeah.
What?
I said that's a neat way of having the armor function to not do damage without having to make more rolls.
Exactly. And it's also maybe your swords clang together or you hit each other's shields or whatever, right? There's plenty of ways to thematically justify how that works.
And it makes sense now, too, why the armor is so beefy on a wizard.
Yeah, you're like armor 10, Jesus.
Right. Like, that sounded high to me.
But if you're keeping score, remember, like, your base armor is 10, right? And we're rolling a d20. And let's say I roll a 20, a natural 20. And let me tell you, a natural 20 is a crit and automatic plus 5 damage.
So, my armor 10, you're doing 15 damage.
15, and you're probably dead. There's not a whole lot of stuff that has 15 health in this game. So,
and now, conceivably, you could have been plus 10 modifier, so you could have been rolling a 30.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Owie.
Yep. Exactly. So you can really paste people if you get really lucky in this game. And that's what we're talking about. And we're talking about single D20 rolls, right? So it can get ridiculously swingy. But this is one of those games where you roll dice so often because you have 10 models. Models are constantly hitting each other. Generally, what I've seen is models don't get 1 shot. They get 2 shot, 2 or 3.
Right.
Usually you're taking between 2 and 5 damage per hit. That's pretty, or nothing at all, right?
Right.
If I'm being honest, a lot of combats end without any damage. Especially when you have guys with 13 and 14 armor.
Right.
So, so that's combat in Frostgrave for melee. Now, range combat is slightly different in that when you're rolling for shooting, the first person makes a shoot stat and the other person makes a roll with their fight stat. And if you hit with the shoot stat, you hit. And if the person that's dodging wins, they don't do damage back. They just dodge the attack.
Because it's ranged.
This is ranged. And this is why you'll see that in general, models have pluses for fight, but not pluses for shooting.
Okay. Does
that make sense?
Yep.
So it makes it like slightly less likely that you're actually going to do damage in ranged.
Okay.
Right. Which makes sense.
Exactly. Yep. It would be really crappy if not. And also, you have defense modifiers. Like, all of the modifiers in shooting, like, none of the modifiers are for the shooter. They're all for the defender. And it's like intervening terrain +1, light cover +2, heavy cover +4. So, like, if the model that's shooting you moved before they shot, you get +1. So, like, it's much easier to dodge a shot than it is to, like, do damage back in melee, right? Like, because you can really easily end up with +5 to your already plus fight to somebody's +0 for shoot.
Right.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I like it.
Cool. So that's your, like, basic primer for how combat works. Now, spell casting, every spell has a casting value And that's what you have to roll to hit your spell. On your spells that are in your school, it's just the casting number. And then your allied ones, you have the +4 modifier. Your neutral ones, you have a +2. Your neutral, you have a +4, and your unaligned magic, you have +6. So it's harder to cast the spells outside of your discipline.
Right, makes sense to that. Yeah, you're just not as proficient with it, so it makes sense.
Yep, and the casting values vary pretty widely. I think 8 is generally your lowest, and they go all the way up to 14.
Oh, okay.
And to give you an idea how that works, just looking at Chronomancer, your cast 8 is Fast Act, which will allow a figure to activate at the end of a current phase rather than its normal phase. So, like, if you saw one of your guys, like, as an example, I had a guy that was 10 inches away. That guy can't activate with me, right? Mm-hmm. With my wizard, but I can cast Fast Act on him, and then he will be able to activate during my wizard phase.
I like that.
But this goes all the way to the skill 14, which is Time Walk, which allows your wizard to activate in every phase.
Oh,
wow. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, just a little.
It's also funny that if you and the cool thing about time walking, like this game is so thematic, you guys. So that spell that I just said, right? You're like, time walk, Jesus, why wouldn't I cast that every turn? So if you successfully cast time walk 2 turns in a row, you take 8 damage because you're just like breezing through time too much. You know, it's risky to manipulate time that much.
Yeah, I like it because, you know, like, you're doing something super powerful, but there is risk.
Right, there's consequences.
You know, for tapping that magic.
Exactly. And we haven't talked about the other part of casting spells being risky. And that is that when you fail casting a spell, you can take damage from the failure.
Okay.
It's based on the amount you fail by. So if you fail a spell by between 1 and 4, you don't take damage. If you between 5 and 9, you take 1. Between 10 and 19, you take 2 damage. And if you fail it by 20, you take 5 damage.
Wow.
Dang.
So
don't roll a 1.
Yeah, so don't roll a 1 when you've got a 19 or whatever, right? Or a 20 or whatever success. You don't want that.
Right.
But also to note is that you are allowed to what's called amplify spells, and you can empower spells. So after you cast a spell, you can trade your health 1 for 1 to increase your roll.
Ooh, that's fascinating.
You cast a spell and you're like, oh, I missed by 3. I'm going to take 3 damage to make the spell go off.
Ooh,
right. I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Also, some spells can be resisted. And the spells that can be resisted are noted that they're resistible. And it's basically, that's what your will stat is mostly for, is that if you can resist the spell, you make a will roll, and your will roll has to be either 14 or what you rolled to cast the spell. So because 14 is a minimum roll here, just much like 10 is a maximum bonus for magic. 14, even if I successfully casted that 8 spell with an 8, if you were going to resist it, it has to be a 14.
Okay.
But then if I roll a 15 through 20, you have to resist at what I rolled it at.
Gotcha.
I gotcha.
So if I rolled 19 and you're like, fuck, there's no way I'm resisting this spell, right? So that's spell casting. And now we've gone through most of the core stuff. So how, I got an excitement level. I'm curious, Chris, where you're at right now.
I'm liking it so far. I like that there's positives and negatives to the actions you're taking. Everything seems simple. Like, I like target numbers. It makes, for me, as someone who is math deficient, it makes things easier on me. So far, everything I'm hearing, I'm liking.
Yeah, and you keep good track of that on your character sheet too. You a glance at your character sheet will tell you basically exactly what you have to roll for something.
Right.
Plus the back of the book, which I've been referencing a couple times we've been talking, has and it even notes that they're like photocopyable. So each page is one of the schools of magic, and then they're made into cards. So like if you're an elementalist, you can photocopy the elementalist page and then cut the cards out for each spell. So like you can just keep your spell cards with you on the table.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That makes things easier.
Pretty cool. And that way you don't have to like write down the whole spell on your character sheet.
Right. Ugh. No one wants to do that.
All right. So things we haven't talked about, like when you're moving with treasure, you move at half speed, and and that's when you're like moving off the table. And now there's also we talked about the creatures, like other things that can happen, like skeletons and wights and mummies and giant worms and all kinds of fun stuff. So those things work on a simple AI. It's like, is the creature in combat? Yes, it fights. No. Is there a warband member in line of sight? Yes. If it has a missile weapon, shoot. If it doesn't, move as far as it can. And if it gets into combat, go back to step 1 and fight.
Okay. I like flowcharts.
Yeah, it's a flowchart. It'll always go toward the shortest. It'll always attack the person with the least health. Like, it's very easy to be like, knowing exactly what it'll do. And then if none of that is true, it does random movement. So basically you roll the D20 and it moves in the direction that the D20 is facing. Its normal move stat. And then basically what it does is you make checks again depending on how far it moves. Because like if its movement is 5 and you say it's going to move 3 inches the way the dice is facing, and then it runs into something and has 2 inches left of movement, then you go back and say, now is it in combat with somebody? Now can it see somebody? It'll move that rest of 2 inches toward that person. It's really easy. It's a 1-page flowchart. And then basically you play until the game ends, and the game ends in a couple ways. Once the 5th treasure token is moved off the table, that will end the game. If one player has everybody get killed, that will also end the game. And I'll tell you from playing Ghost Archipelago, that's not super common, pretty rare. And yeah, that's it. That's basically the 2 ways that it ends. And then in standard games, like the winner is basically the person who secures the most treasure. And then if there is in a campaign game, there are some scenarios that have like the winner is X, the loser is X. But that's the core thing about the game. In terms of like, especially everything you need to know to play a one-off scenario, you need to read it for the subtleties, but that's the basic flow. All right, guys, remember how I said this book was 222 pages?
Yes.
We are on page 73.
Jesus.
So everything else is missions and
we've already been going a while. So we're not going to go through everything, and especially because a lot of it is like the bestiary and the many, many scenarios. But Chris, I want to talk about the campaign with you for a minute, because I feel like we're going to have a moment here.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
All right. Okay, so the first thing to get out of the way is injury and death, because you wouldn't have a good, risky campaign if it wasn't possible for people to die. And there's a table, and in general, when you roll on one of these tables, if you roll 9 or higher, your character lives. So you have above 50% chances that your character lives with no consequences.
Okay.
So that's good. Now, when we're talking about soldiers, a roll of 1 through 4, kaput, that guy's dead. 5 through 8 is badly wounded, and badly wounded just means they miss the next game because they're nursing an injury.
Okay.
Easy peasy. So wizards and apprentices can also die. So if your wizard or apprentice dies in the game, they get knocked out in the game. On a roller of a 1 to a 2, they are permanently dead.
Oh.
If your apprentice dies, you can hire a new apprentice. That is a thing you can do. But if you lose your wizard, what happens is if your wizard is not level 6, the game is just like, you should probably roll a new wizard. But if you're level 6 or higher, because your apprentice gains stats with your wizard. Like when your wizard levels up, your apprentice levels up. Okay. And so if you're level 6 or higher, your apprentice becomes your wizard.
Oh, I like that.
So that's pretty neat. And then your new wizard hires their new apprentice.
Now, can I have my apprentice purposely kill the master so it can become the master?
I don't know that you
okay, so no rule.
Only if he has a red sword?
I don't think so. But that's funny. So going further, 3 or 4, you get a permanent injury. And the permanent injuries are all like fun and thematic. And none of them are things where you're like, fuck this wizard, I'm not playing him anymore. It's mostly like, you know, my level 10 wizard has psychological scars, or maybe they lost a finger, has a smashed jaw. And you keep it because like it's not bad enough that you want to roll a new wizard.
Right.
Like as an example, lost toes. The first time you lose toes, it's a -1 to all your move. And the second time you lose the toes, it's -2. So it's not like game breaking stuff.
Right.
But just like things that are annoying.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that there's consequences, there's penalties, but at the same time, like it's not so much where you're not going to be able to enjoy the game going forward.
Sorry, but at the same time,
you're still going to be able to enjoy the game going forward, you know, because they're not too critical, they're not too harsh.
Oh yeah, and it adds so much story to the game, right? Because they're like minor inconveniences to your stats. It's just like cool character things that your person has. It's like the role playing story adding that you can give to your character,
right?
Because you roll on the injury table, right? And there's a bevy of different possible injuries. So then the next one is a 5 to 6. That's badly wounded. Badly wounded basically means you miss the next game, but you can pay for medical treatment to make it to the next game. So cool. You can pay out of your coffers, and if you have hired an apothecary, there's a huge discount. You only pay 1/3 of your medical bill. So the apothecary is someone you can hire.
So so basically in the campaign, you just missed that campaign week. You can't play in that week's campaign, essentially.
Right. That's correct.
You can't let your apprentice go out there and try to do it for you?
Oh, no, you can. They can either play the game without the injured spellcaster, or they can pay for medical treatment.
Gotcha. Okay, so you as the player can continue to play.
That's correct. And your wizard can go into debt, too. So if you don't want to miss the game and you don't have 150 gold for the standard fee, or the 50 if you've got an apothecary, you can go into debt, but you have to pay the debt off before you can buy anything else.
That makes sense.
This game's getting a little too much like real life for me. I said this game's getting too much like real life for me now.
Too many permanent injuries and medical bills. You also we talked about experience a little bit, and I noted to you can get a 300 experience per game. In general, you always get 40. You get plus 10 for each time you successfully cast with the wizard or the apprentice. And you might be going, really? But there's actually a spot on your character sheet to just make a hash whenever you cast a spell successfully. So it's really easy to keep track of how many successful spells you have in a game. You get 40 experience for each treasure you secure. So if you lose and you pull 2, you're still getting 120. Your standard nice. 40 plus 40 plus 40 plus anything you got for casting spells. And because you're able to convert 100 experience into a level, in general, you're going to level up at least once every game.
Okay. Yeah, I like that because it's like even if I lost, I still did stuff. So I still should get experience. I like that.
And your character and your then that means your wizard and your apprentice will always get better from game to game.
Right. I like it.
Then when you level up, you can improve your stats. So you can go +1 in your following stats up to maximums. So you can get you can make your fight go up to +5, your shoot go up to +5, your will go up to +8, and your health go up to 20. So that's how far you can improve your stats. You can also improve a spell which is like basically lowers the casting number, right? So you basically are making it more likely that you'll successfully cast that spell. And every spell can be reduced to 5. So if you have that Time Walk spell and you really want Time Walk and you really want to cast Time Walk all the time, you can spend 9 levels on Time Walk to get it down to 5. And then you cast it on 5 instead of 14.
Now, does that make it easier for, like, if that, I'm assuming that's probably not a resistible spell, but if it was, that would make it easier to resist?
No, because 14 is the minimum for resisting.
Okay, cool. Gotcha.
So a resistible spell will always be 14 to resist, no matter
14
what your cast
or what
value
you rolled.
was. Good question, though.
Yeah.
Because that could be like a really what, but that's exactly why that 14 rule is there.
Yep, makes sense.
But also, you can spend one of your levels to learn a new spell, because one of the things you can find in those treasure chests that you're pulling off the maps are grimoires.
Ooh.
And every grimoire has the potential to teach you a spell you don't know. And you can spend a level learning a new spell for your wizard, including spells that are in your opposed school. So if you were wondering from the beginning, like, why is there a stat modifier for spells I can't learn anyway? You can learn them through these grimoires.
Makes sense.
So that's pretty cool. And so after the game, like, one of the things you do is roll on the treasure table. And there are 20 different things on the treasure table, and each of them is different. But, like, as an example, one of the things you get is a D20 roll times 20 gold pieces. So in that case, a natural 20 would get you 400 gold, right?
Right.
There's also magic weapon and armor. There's 40 gold in a magic weapon and armor. There's 100 gold in a grimoire, right? There's like a bunch of things, and you get to roll for each treasure. And a crucial element of this is that if you pulled off the center one, the one that's in the middle of the table, you get a reroll on your first roll on the treasure table. So if you're like, nah, I don't want that one, you can reroll it.
Huh. That's kind of cool.
And now, remember, I talked about like a magic item, a scroll, a grimoire. Like, how do I know what I get? Guess what? There's tables, motherfuckers.
Booty charts.
There's booty charts. So there's a table full of potions. There's a table full of greater potions. And there's so many kinds of cool potions, like a potion of fire breath. A figure that drinks this potion and still has an action remaining in the same activation may use that action to make a +3 elemental magic shooting attack at a figure within 3 inches. So you basically like down this thing and then breathe fire at somebody.
Oh, I like that.
There's potions of healing. There's an elixir of speed that gives you +2 for the rest of the game. Like, there's a whole bunch of cool spells. So that's a thing you can get is a potion, or sorry, not spells, but potions. There's a potion of teleportation that allows you to use the teleportation spell when you down the potion. And now grimoires are freaking cool because, like, if you're paying attention, you're like, how can there be all these grimoires? But it's 2d20 rolls. Your first roll gives you a column, and then your second one gives you a row. So you roll a 16, that puts you on the 16 to 20 roll, and then maybe you roll a 1, that gives you a grimoire of control undead, as an example. But all the spells in the game are on here. So you could potentially find the instructions for casting any of the spells.
Right. That's pretty cool.
Yep. And also, guys, magic armor and weapons. So there's a table for that.
Okay, I was wondering when we were going to get there.
Yeah, so you've got another one. It's another table. You roll on it. And the cool thing we talked about, right, is that the way that this game separates stuff is it's like two-handed weapon. Now, you can take that to mean whatever you want. That can be your pikeman. That can be your knight with a broadsword, right?
Right.
And it is really cool that it's that way. And now there are 3 different magic two-handed weapons. One of them is +1 damage, one of them is +1 fight, and one of them is +2 will.
Okay.
So there's all these things. And then there's also armors, right? So like a magical armor gives you an additional +1 armor. You can get a magic shield. all sorts of stuff. There's things that do elemental absorption. There's all sorts of fun shit. Bows that give you plus shoot. And then again, all of these can also be sold if you don't want them for the gold values that are also listed on the sheet. And that goes for potions, grimoires, magic items, all of them. So you can sell them.
So are you able, you're not able, I'm going to guess, you're not able to equip your Fuds, but you can equip your caster and or apprentice?
So your caster and apprentice have an inventory where they can equip things, and your Fuds have a list of things that they've got. They can't be equipped with other things from stores, but they can replace the item they carry with a magic item.
Oh.
So if you have a knight carrying a two-handed sword and you find a two-handed magic sword, you can give it to that knight.
Oh, that's cool.
I like it.
Yeah. So that's that. And then there's also like other things, like other magic items. That like there's a Boots of Speed, a Ring of Slowfall, Horn of Destruction, Ring of Teleportation. So like all sorts of cool shit. Like, so it's because what we were talking about before was magic weapons and armor, and now we also have magic items. So again, dude, like once you start playing this game and you start pulling treasure off, like it's like one of those like surprise boxes, right? It's like a Kinder Egg for adults. You pull the treasure chest off.
It's a loot box without all the penalties.
And the like Legend of Zelda music plays, and you roll the d20 and get fat loots.
It's a loot box that the European government doesn't penalize you for.
Loot box. That's the word I was searching for, and Kinder Egg is what came up with because I'm a dad.
Kinder Egg is more fun.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, you can you can hire new soldiers, new apprentices, et cetera, at the end of games. You can buy and sell your items, and also after your first game, Potter, you get to pick a base,
like a base of operations.
Yeah, like an inn, a temple, a crypt, a tower, a treasury, a brewery, a library, a laboratory.
That's cool.
And there's rules for each one of those, and you get to pick the one that you want based on the bonus that it gives you.
Hold on a second. Are you saying that my necromancer can live in a crypt?
Yes.
Paul, when's our campaign?
Paul, if you live in the crypt, spellcasters receive a +2 bonus on all raise zombie and animate skull spells.
Oh shit! I'm glad I didn't sell my Nicodem model.
Because now he's a Frostgrave wizard.
He's a steampunk Frostgrave wizard.
Yeah, and think about this, Paul. You can your raise undead spell, like you can name your zombie. So if you want to have like a zombie that's always rolling with you, like I don't know, Brutus, you can always raise Brutus.
And now I know what you're doing with those punk zombies.
Yeah, well, I don't know what I have left. I sold most of them.
And guys, after you do that, you also have resources that you can spend into your base. So once you've got your base, you could say buy a crystal ball for your case or for your base, or you could buy a summoning circle, or you could buy a sarcophagus of healing.
I love it.
And all of these things help you with stuff out of like the things that can happen out of game. Like you can brew potions, some of the spells you actually cast before your game, and these will help you with those. The sarcophagus of healing, as an example, makes your medical bills 10 gold cheaper.
These perks, and these are so cool. This is so flavorful.
It's amazing, dude. Amazing. And the only thing we have left to talk about are the spells themselves and the scenarios. And I don't really want to ruin the spells, like, because it's so fun to go through them. Like I can read a couple, like just as an example, Bone Dart is one of the necromancer spells. So this spell fires a small sharp shard of bone. The spellcaster makes a +5 shooting attack against any figure in line of sight in 12 inches. This does not count as a magic attack. It's just like, take a bone, motherfucker. And that's just an example, right? And there are tons of spells in the game. Again, 8 in each school. So you got Control Undead, Elemental Ball, Elemental Bolt, Explosive Runes, Teleportation, Power Word, which again, man, D&D stuff, like the influence is heavy. You can summon demons. Anyway, lots of stuff. So fun things in the spell charts. Again, I can't read them all, right? Because we'd be here all day, me reading 80 spells.
Right.
But super fun. But we should talk about scenarios, because we haven't talked about the scenarios yet, and the scenarios are another way this game is deeply flavorful. So there is a random scenario table with, since it's a D20 and there's only D20s in the game, you guessed it, 20 scenarios, you guys. 20. What do we talk about with games, right? Like needing replay value. We're like, this game has 8 scenarios in the book. Holy damn, this thing has 20 scenarios.
Right.
And they are flavorful. So like you have a scenario called the Mausoleum. Another thing that's cool is that the scenarios tell you what you need. So like when you look at the Mausoleum, it tells you that you need a mausoleum piece of terrain and skeletons. It gives you a cool like setup instructions. So for this one, instead of placing that middle treasure token, what you do is you place the mausoleum dead set in the middle, and then you put a treasure token in each corner of the mausoleum, and then you place a skeleton in the middle of each wall and at the treasures themselves. So you've got like 8 skeletons on the board at the start, and you're going to be, now it's not just the opposing wizard you're going to have to worry about, it's also the army of skeletons guarding the treasures. And that's the mausoleum. But that's just one example. You've also got like the worm hunts, where you have a giant worm, and then on a specific die roll, that giant worm will explode out of the ground directly adjacent to one of the treasure tokens, and then start messing people up. And that's including treasure tokens that someone's trying to drag off the board.
A la Dune style.
A la Dune style, right? Exactly. You got to like walk strangely when you're walking on Arrakis. Don't tread on me rhythmically or whatever.
Oh God! So one of the never mind.
You're about to go so off track.
Yeah, but again, there's 20 of these things. There's a scenario for haunted houses where you need 5 huts, and then you have ghouls and wraiths, and those ghouls and wraiths are going to be basically like possibly in each one of them, because the way it works is like you have to go into the hut for a treasure token, right? But when you go into the hut, you have to roll a dice, and depending on what you roll, whatever it is pops out of the goddamn hut.
Surprise!
Yeah. So fun stuff, man. Very, very, very fun scenarios. I enjoy them a lot. And again, there are 20 of them. So lots of variability. And there's even a note in here that says, like, you thought these 20 were a lot. Go to this website and download dozens more. Plus, there's also books that you can buy. And the different books have the different ones as well.
Okay, let me ask you this. I know we're kind of wrapping up on Frostgrave. So how does this is Ghost Archipelago a completely separate system, or does it, like, can my wizard play against something from Ghost Archipelago?
So I don't know that there's any official crossover rules for playing a wizard squad against a Heriter squad, but Ghost Archipelago has that same loop where it's like 5 treasure tokens on the board. You're trying to pull those treasure tokens off the board. The stats are basically the same, but the spells and the way that they work are very, very different. I'll say that like the hand weapons, 2-hand weapons, like all those are basically, I'd have to compare them, but I'm pretty sure they're almost identical. And the stats are pretty identical on your crew members too. There aren't as many in Ghost Archipelago. You don't have like quite as many different kinds of people. But Heritors, like it's the things that you have instead of wizards, are more like mutants, like X-Men, than they are like wizards. The nature of the powers is much different than your standard wizard.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess the question is, like, maybe. I haven't tried it. I think that it'd probably be fun to try it, and I haven't actually dug enough into the community to know if people have done it. But both games take place in the same fictional world.
Right,
so,
which
like,
that I knew. It's just like a different, part of it. So I was curious if it built on each other. Like, could you play those new guys against the old guys, or are you just limited to.
And it's funny because there may even be rules for that in the Ghost Archipelago book, and because I never had Frostgrave, I didn't even check to see if you could go cross system. And listeners, if there's anybody who knows the answer to this or you've tried it, you should let us know, because I'd actually be really curious, because when you go and you look at the rules for multiple combats, because I was telling you, you get crowd out bonuses, and when you're looking through the rules, the examples are basically the same to show you how those different things work. And then the advantages and disadvantages for shooting arranged, and the way that you do damage, all those things are identical between the two systems. So, I mean, it's possible maybe that you could play one against the other, but I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of hope so. I feel like that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think it would be cool. But that's also a cool question, and I don't know the answer, and I'm going to probably dig into it now because I didn't know that ahead of time. So the only other thing I want to talk about in Frostgrave before we start up is one of the optional rules, which is really cool, which is an optional rule for random encounters. And how this works is if both players that are playing, or if all the players are playing, agree that you should play with this rule, every time one of the treasure chests is claimed, you roll a die, and on a 10 or higher, you roll on a table to have a random creature show up on a random board edge.
Ooh, I like that. That's fun.
Yeah, so it just makes the game even more threatening. And there's a huge array of creatures too, right? Everything from your, things we talked about already, like ghouls, zombies, worms, to ice spiders and gorillas and constructs and bears. There's just this huge bestiary, and each entry in the bestiary has a stat line and a description of each one of these creatures that could show up and fight against you. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, so that is Frostgrave, you guys.
I'm interested.
Cool. See, I was really curious, Chris, to get your opinion, because the more, I started reading Frostgrave itself, because again, like I said, I played quite a bit of Ghost Archipelago, but the book is half the size of the Frostgrave book. And the comparisons to Mordheim, I thought for you would line up devastatingly close.
Yes, I mean when you were like, here's the setting, I was like, this is Mordheim, just because I mean I'll say my closing comment now, my final thought now. GW, don't worry about recreating Mordheim. I think I found something I'm going to be playing instead.
All right. Yeah, so and my final thought is just go by the book. Take the risk. So and here's why I say it. It's a beautifully bound hardcover book, and even if you buy it from your friendly local game store, which you should, it's only $35. So think about a Games Workshop codex. $50, and you get the rules for one army. You get this whole thing. Everything this game is, there are expansions, but this is a tome of fun for $35. So take the risk on it. Buy the book.
Yeah, I mean that's not a bad price for such a huge book.
Yeah, again, a 222 page hardcover, gorgeously illustrated, lavishly featured book, tons of tables and diagrams, beautiful artwork, beautiful miniature photography, just chef's kiss of a book this book is.
Yep. No, that's a good price for such a huge book. I mean, $35 for all that. I mean, one question I did have. So you're going through over and you're saying character sheet. Obviously my brain goes to old pen and paper, like we did in Mordheim, like you do in D&D. Is there electronic resources for this?
There is electronic resources.
Very nice.
Yep. There are PDFs that are editable. Or at least I've had editable PDFs for it. I've got editable PDFs for both games. So, yes.
Makes it even more attractive.
Yep. But, you want to keep one. The way that I did it, like when I was playing Ghost Archipelago, is I would put one inside of like one of those clear sleeves, and I would take like stock of things that were happening in game with a wet or dry erase marker on the sleeve, and then at the end of the game, I would record everything that I needed to in pencil.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's not that bad because like a lot of the stuff you can do away from the table. All you really need to know is how many treasure chests did I get and how much experience did I get, right? Because like if you need to pack up, you and your buddy can be like, I got 2 treasures, I'll roll on the tables when I get home. You know, like if you have to. Obviously, it's fun to like open that Kinder Egg at the table with your buddy, but you don't need to.
Right.
And then like all that out of combat stuff you can settle just like your list building would be at home. And you can think about how to spend your gold and how to level up your wizard. Like you can just do all that later. You don't have to do it at the table. So the post-game record keeping isn't actually as bad as it might seem on the surface.
Gotcha.
So Paul, you've got our final thought.
Just need a book. I can use my Nicodem, and he can live in a crypt. I'm in.
Sweet. All right, who wants to read us out?
All right. So thank you guys. Appreciate you guys taking the chance to listen to us. If you want, join us on our Discord. We probably have, I think, one of the best communities out there of all the Discord servers that I'm on. There's always constant conversation going out there, and the crew out there is a very awesome group of people. Thank you to Static as a City for the intro and outro music, and come find us on the Twitters, the Facebook, and the Grams. So that's all. Thank you guys.